Again, welcome to Statistics with Microsoft Excel. In these lectures, we continue with the descriptive statistics. In our previous lectures, we learned how we can create different types of charts using a data set with only one variable. Example, customers' spendings, patients' age, number of franchise size a store have. Again, those variables are only one: weight, age, etc. In these lectures, we're going to learn how we have one data set, but this time we have two variables. Example will be a company total expenses and revenue for each year. So we have 10 years of record of a company. Each year, how much money they spend on advertisement and how much revenue, money that they generate. So we want to know if the more money they spend, the more revenue they are going to generate, or the more money they spend, the less revenue they are going to generate, or there's no relationship between the two. So either they spend more or less, the revenue generate may be the same or slightly different. So our goal is that we want to plot, again, we have the data set for maybe, let's say 50 years. The data set is too much that we cannot see the pattern. So the best thing, we can plot this data and we may see whether there's an increasing pattern or there's a decreasing pattern, or there's not even any pattern at all, which means there's no relationship between how much a company spend on advertisement and how much revenue or income they generated. Either there's a relationship, increase or decreasing, or there's no relationship. And that's what we are going to learn in this section. So our data set here will be two variables. So here we summarize data for two variables using tables. We can use tables. Also, again, we can use graphical tools or charts. So far we focus on using one variable at a time. Our data set have only one variable in our previous lectures. In this lecture, again, as we said, we have a data set with at least two variables. Now we want to find the relationship between the two variables. The best chart to use would be the scatter plot or the scatter diagram. And also we can have the trend line. A trend line is what we call the best fit line. It shows the pattern, whether it's increasing or decreasing. Again, we're going to see it, and also we are going to perform the practicals in using the Microsoft Excel. So first, let's start with the theory, the concept, then we go straight to the Excel program and do the practicals. So a scatter diagram is a graphical representation of a relationship between two quantitative variables. Again, the keyword here is quantitative variables. We are using values. That's why the example I gave was total expenses in dollars and also revenue generated in dollars. So one variable is shown on the horizontal axis. Normally the variable on the horizontal axis, we call it the independent variable. That's the variable that will determine the vertical axis variable. So in my example, we have total expenses and we have a revenue. Which one is independent variable? It will be the expenses, because here we want to know the company have to spend more money first on advertisement, then we see how much revenue they are going to generate. So if I'm going to plot this, my horizontal axis will be total expenses. My vertical will be the total revenue generated. So again, horizontal axis is the independent variable, and that's going to determine the dependent variable, which is the vertical. Another example will be, this is just a short example. Let's say we said, how do we get a lung cancer? Maybe cigarette smoking. So cigarette smoking causes lung cancer. So that means the number of cigarettes you smoke will be your independent variable, horizontal. Then the number of patients that had lung cancer will be our vertical. So again, we can still use a scatter plot for this to find if there's a relationship between cigarette smoking and lung cancer. So the general pattern of the plotted points suggests, again, the overall relationship between the variables. Then we may have the trend line that provide an approximation of the relationship. With Excel, we can generate the trend line. So easy, and we will do it in a few minutes. So this is an example of a positive relationship. This tells us that if the X value is increasing, the Y value is also increasing. The X, which is the horizontal axis, it increases to the right, and the Y also increases up. So we can see the pattern increasing. So this is called a positive relationship, which means, let's say my total expenses is X and my revenue is Y. So this means I have increasing relationship. The more money I spend on commercial advertisement, the more revenue I'm going to generate. We also have the negative relationship, which means the more money I spend, the less revenue I will generate. So we can see the pattern going down. As S increases to the right, Y is decreasing down. So this is a negative relationship. Then we have the one with no relationship. So this is no apparent relationship. We can see how the data is spread everywhere. The trend line is kind of horizontal, but again, there's no any pattern. So these are the three possible relationships we can get. So we have an example here, and this data set is about a weekly number of commercials and the sales we have. So let's say we have a company, and from week 1 to week 10, every week it shows how many commercials they have and what sales they were generated. So this is an electronic store in San Francisco. They want to analyze the relationship between sales and also advertising. So the sample data for 10 weeks with sales in hundreds of dollars is shown below. When they have 2 advertisements, they generated 50,000. This should be in hundreds, sorry. And when it 5 is 57, etc. So now we want to see if there's any relationship between these two. And the best way to go is by using the scatter plot. So when we plot, now as we see the question, we have to do advertisement first before we know how much money we are going to generate. So our x-axis will be the number of commercials and the y will be the sales. And here we saw that, wow, when we generate the sales, the number of commercials go up, which is increasing, also the sales increasing. So we can see that we generate a trend line that's, again, positive relationship. The more commissions we have, the more sales we also have. So again, we are going to have do an example right now, but this is the steps. The first thing, again, as we said earlier in our previous lectures also, is that anytime we are creating a chart, we need to select our data first. So here we select a data which is in a cell B1 to C11. Then we click on the Insert tab. Then we go to the chart group area. Then we click the scatter plot, or we can use the bubble chart, either one. Then from there, we will see our pattern. Then if we like, we can change the title of the chart. We can change the x-axis title. We can name it. The grid lines will give us the background, whether there's small boxes or it's square. We can do that. Most importantly, also, we can generate a trend line. That's what we're going to do now. So let's go straight forward. So when we finish, we are going to get something like this. So here we can see week 1 to week 10. We enter our data for the number of commercials and the data for sales volume. And when we create our chart, this is the, again, what we have, positive relationship. As the number of commercial increase, the sales also increase. So let's do the steps now. So I'm going back. I'm going to use this data. It's almost the same data we have on the slide. So we have the week from week 1 to week 10, the number of commercials they generated for each week, and the sales we have. So I want to know if there's any relationship between these two. So first thing I need, again, is our data. So I'm going to select my data first. Then I'll click on the insert. Then I'll go to the chart grouping area. And this time I'm looking for the scatter plot. And we can, again, when you press your mouse pointer on any button, the name will show up, which we call the screen tip. So when I press my mouse button here, it shows that it's a scatter plot. And that's what I'm looking for, either scatter or bubble chart. Some textbooks call it bubble chart. Some textbooks use the term scatter. So I'll click on it. Then now we have different, again, this is just the design. We have different types. We can select the ones we like. If we want the bubble or any one we want, we can select. So I'm just going to select, let's look this one also. This is the line chart. Or let's, okay, we also have option. We can create the recommended chart. See the recommended chart also. Always I like the recommended chart. See the recommended chart gave us, since the system saw that we have two variables, it gave us the idea of at least scatter plot. Scatter plot, we need two variables, but with the column chart and bar chart, we can use one or two variables. So for example, we have the column chart here, but we can see that there's two bars together at a time because we have two values, two variables at a time. But here again, we want the scatter plot, so it's already selected. We click OK. So this is our scatter plot. And when we look at the pattern, we can see that there's an increasing this relationship. Now, to get the trend line, first again, we can change the title of the chart. Maybe I may name it just store sales. And if you want the design to, it's up to you. We can so when I select the chart, I can see different designs. If you want to change the background grading, it's up to us. So let me leave it as this design. Now, in order to get the trend line, we need to right-click any of the points. So I'm going to right-click any of them, and I'll look for hard trend line. The menu said hard trend line, and that's what we need. So I'll click on the trend line, and we will see the best fit line. Now, when you look at the line, we can see that the line is increasing. Just that it's not increasing too fast. So the slope or the steepness of the line is very small, but it's a positive. Also, we have another option. We can come down here, the trend line options. If we don't like a linear, we can change it to exponential. If we think it's an exponential, we select exponential. But exponential doesn't look too good. Logarithm, we can also select, we can see the shape of the logarithm. Also, if it's polynomial, you can select polynomial, etc. But here we're doing linear. Let's leave it as linear trend. Also, if I need the regression, so here we have a model now. We saw the relationship. In order to get this trend line, this is a college algebra. We know a straight line have an equation of a straight line, like point slope line equation form. So we can have something like y equal to ms plus b. Y will be our y-axis. In this case, is the sales. X will be our number of commercials. And then m is the slope of this line. Then the b will be the y-intercept. So this line will go all the way and touch the y. When s is 0, what is the value of y? That will be the b. So it's y equal to mx plus b. Now we can come up down here and we can look here. They say display equation on chart. Display equation on chart. So I'll click on that and I'll see the equation. It's exactly like a college algebra because this is a linear. So the equation will be a straight line. I'll try to increase it so that we can see the equation. So I'm going to home and I'll increase the size and just make it as big as possible just for us to see it. We can see that the equation is exactly like a straight line equation. I mean, in a college algebra, the slope is 4.95. The y-intercept is 36.15, which makes sense because when you go down here, we'll see that the line will be straight. It will touch between 30 to 40. So it's 36.15. So Excel will give us everything. In statistics, we call this the regression line. This will make it possible for us to have a prediction now. So now we have up to the sales up to the commercial up to 6. Now I can say, okay, what if we have 10 commercials? So I'll put the value of S equal to 10. So I'll get 4.95 times 10 plus 36.15. That will give me the sales if I have 10 commercials. So this line again is used for prediction. Now, any number of commercials I have for the week, I can predict the total sale I can have from this equation. Again, we may go more details on this when we study the regression analysis, both multiple and simple regression. So I think that will be the end of our lectures. The next slide here is just to explain different type of chart we have. So for example, if I have a bar chart, what bar chart shows? It shows the frequency distribution or relative frequency distribution for categorical data. A pie chart also shows what relative frequency or percent frequency for categorical data. We also have a dot plot, which normally show the distribution for quantitative data over the entire range of the data. We saw the histogram. Normally, histogram will show the frequency distribution for a quantitative data over a set of class interval. And we also have a stem and leaf display. Normally shows the rank order and the shape of distribution for quantitative order. These are all different types of graphical displays, and we can use Excel. And even we have more in Excel. And we saw the scatter plot. Scatter, again, diagram or plot show the relationship between two quantitative variables. And within the scatter plot, we can come up with a trend line, which will approximate the relationship of data in a scatter diagram. And normally we have something called a data dashboard. A data dashboard is widely used data visualization tool. And also it organizes and presents key performance indicators, which is KPIs, that are used to monitor an organization or process. Normally we have some advanced like Tableau. Tableau is a very good visual or graphical application that we can use to, again, plot more advanced graphics or charts. Example would be the weatherman at news, and we can see different types of chart to represent the weather data, etc. So this is an example of a dashboard. We see the data representation in terms of bars. By the center, we also see different, and also histogram, etc. So when we have a data, we can use different types of graphical displays. If it's a categorical data, we can use the tabular display, like frequency distribution, relative frequency distribution, percent frequency distribution, cross tabulation. We went through most of all this. Then the graphical displays, we saw the pie chart, side-by-side pie chart, or stack pie chart. Now with quantitative, we can also have the histogram. So the graphical display, histogram, dot plot, stem and leaf, scatter plot, or frequency distribution, etc. So this will be our conclusion of our lectures. But before we go, I want us to look again at the chart process. So in this section, we learn how to plot a chart that have two variables. The data set have two variables. Here we have two variables here. We want to see if there's any relationship between number of commercials given by a store and also the sales generated, the sales volume. So is it that, let's say this is a TV commercial. When a store let a TV station play more commercial, will the store generate more revenue or more sales? we have a data for 10 weeks. So we decided to use the scatter plot to see if there's any pattern. We saw that there was a pattern here. We saw an increasing pattern. Now, to create this chart, let's go through one more time. I will select my data first, then I'll click on Insert. Then I'll rather go to, I like to use the recommended charts because you see more 2, 3, 4 different types. Here I'm looking for scatter plot, so they already give me the scatter plot. And the reason why we say scatter plot again is 2 variables, x and y axis, to find the relationship. So here, when I look at the graph, so yeah, there's an increasing relationship. Only it's not too much, but there's increasing. So the best way to find out if there's increasing is to show the trend line, to show the straight line to see the increasing. So I'll right click on any of the points. Do not right click outside the chart. I will not see the trend line. You have to make sure your chart is selected and you right click any dot point. Then we should see the trend line. Here we have the hard trend line. I click on it and I can see increasing. The straight line is increasing. We saw the lectures decreasing means the line will go down from beginning, go down. Now the next thing is if I want to see if I have, again, this is a straight line. So it's like a college algebra. We have a linear equation, a straight line equation. So this also can give us the equation, except give us everything. I'll go to the right here and I'll see display equation on chart. So I'll click on it and I should see the equation here. And this is equation, as we mentioned earlier. We can use it to predict any number of commercial. This is more or less a regression analysis now. So S represents the input, the x-axis, Y represents the output, the dependent. In this case, it will be the sales volume. So if I play 10 commercial, then I'll get 10 times 4.95, which will give me 49.5 plus 36.15. So roughly, let's say 49 plus 36 will give me somewhere around 85. So that will give us 85 and plus. So with this equation, I can predict any number of commercial, what will be the sales volume. And that's the whole concept here. We can also change the chart title. We can, as we said earlier, the same as the previous lecture, we can go to design. Let's select the chart. Then we click on design. We can have any formatting we want for the chart. So again, that's the end of our lectures for today. And again, wish everybody the best. Thank you.